So, 2021 has just left us. I don't know. I just want to ask, were you amongst those that actually set a resolution for 2022? Or were you too afraid to cast a resolution into the unknown, like I was? Well, I'm sure some of us had made promises to make revolutionary mental, physical, and perhaps spiritual changes to the way that we live. Speaking of resolutions, some of our beloved African countries have undergone a few themselves. So here's a recap of the revolutionary events that have taken place in Africa in 2021. Beginning in the north, we've had growing tensions between Algeria and Morocco, whereby Algeria accused Morocco of being involved in a bomb attack that killed at least 3 truck drivers in the Western Sahara. Moreover, whilst a number of African countries such as Zambia, Niger, and the Gambia had peaceful elections, there were major scuffles in others, resulting in numerous civilian injuries and even deaths. In Sudan, for example, just when the world was ready to set it as an example of how a revolution should look like, when an agreement to set up a transitional government was reached between the civilian leadership and the military, which had taken over power from the long-standing leader Omar al-Bashir, what happened? General Abdel Fattah wasn't exactly keen on a fully civilian government just yet. He decided there needed to be some form of, correction in the direction of the revolution. The outcome? A lot of protests, a lot of arrests, a lot of deaths. Looking over to Sudan's right-hand neighbors, Chad, we find that Idris Deby, the former president who held office since 1990, basically hit the refresh button on the 2-term limit, meaning he could run for another 2 terms. Now, soon after the elections, Mr. Deby died during the crossfires between his government and a particular rebel group. And then you have the West African state of Mali that had undergone a coup less than 10 months ago, witnessing yet another coup, in which the appointed transitional president and prime minister were dismissed from their position on grounds of breaching the terms of the charter. Now, in Guinea-Conakry, we saw that the former democratically elected president of the republic, Alpha Conde, was ousted by Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, who the former president himself had appointed to lead the special forces. The Lieutenant Colonel, who currently serves as the interim president, stated that the coup was primarily aimed at reinforcing major social and political reforms that involved taking power away from the hands of one man and placing it back where it truly belonged, with the Guinean people. Now, in the economic realm, I'm going to save you the details on the current economic outlooks of African countries, because we all know how COVID-19 and its constantly upgrading variants, coupled with climate change and God knows what other issues are lurking out there, have been bad for the African economy, or really the world's economy. Perhaps with the exception of a few companies like Amazon, Netflix, Zoom, somehow Tesla. The economic situation is so bad in Africa that African countries had to once again reach out to international organizations like the IMF, the World Bank, and the IDB to seek financial aid. And of course, we got to give a super special shout out to the South African scientists, the phenomenal South African scientists that discovered the latest COVID variant called Omicron. Now, to reward them for their life-saving discovery, the international community graciously decided to impose a travel ban on people residing in Southern Africa. So one might ask, okay, Sano, we get it. 2021, crazy year, hectic year. But with all the information you've laid out, what lessons do you want us to keep in mind going into 2022? That Africa's abundance of natural resources can't buy it happiness? That African countries need an alternative system of governance that is more, suiting to their local circumstances? That coup d'etats ain't all that bad? No, Sano, tell us. What would you do to change the status quo? What are your resolutions for Africa, Sano? To which I say, bruv, chill. I ain't see I was Nelson Mandela. But let me tell you what I do know. I do know that we're still figuring things out. I do know that we need more time and less foreign interference to adjust to the current world. I do know that we need to be the ones to fix our own problems. I'm not a political leader. I'm not an expert in development studies or socioeconomic affairs, but I am an individual with an intellect, a potential skill set, and most importantly, an undying love for my continent. So yes, we could talk about achieving economic prosperity through developing infrastructures, because a country with developed infrastructures is less likely to witness coups. We could talk about establishing effective governance frameworks, because as scholars mention, people only resort to alternative measures when the legal system is ineffective. We could talk about making education reforms, because blah, blah, blah. But I say, for 2022, how about we double down on efforts to becoming more introspective? Because like genuine resolutions, the key is in the process. In other words, it's less about the goal itself and more about the steps that we plan to take in order to achieve those goals. I'm sure we're all familiar with the saying, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. Or in another version, you plan for bail. Yeah. So really the more effective question would be, while attempting to address some of these major problems in our communities, what are some of the practical steps that we could start taking today in order to achieve self-development that would facilitate our efforts to develop our communities? In my humble opinion, my dear brothers and sisters, there are two things that we all can do. Firstly, reforming our mindsets through constantly engaging in self-reflection. How so? Well, analyze. Are you the kind to criticize or mock the development ideas put forth? No? What about the company you keep? Because whether you know it or not, you're surrounded by one of two: the hopeful or the hopeless. Now, secondly, do something. Anything. Read, learn, educate yourself, attend or participate in development initiatives, offer a helping hand, be a supportable. Whatever you do, don't be a hopeless hypercritic. You don't have to be, or rather, not everyone is going to be a Ronaldo or Messi, a Picasso or Steve Jobs. Not because we're not great, but because most of our strengths lie in being the agents that facilitate the discovery of such talents, which is just as if not even more important than the discovered talents themselves. Because without these agents, for all we know, most of these discovered talents would have remained undiscovered. Think of the role of the parent that saved up just enough funds for their child to join a sporting academy and go on to become one of the greatest athletes of our generation. Think of that English or math teacher that inspired that little kid to believe that they could achieve whatever it is that they set their mind and hearts to. Those are the real MVPs, the unsung heroes, the agents of change. Look, there's so much more that could be said, but I think you get the point. Let's MAGA, make Africa great. Let's essentially be more self-reflective and do what is within our capacity. Because it is often the case that small change done collectively leads to big change. So let's do that. And while we're at it, let's always remember, Adibeng, Happy New Year's.